Hey, good morning, and welcome again to Hope Church Midtown on the second Sunday of 2019. Last week, we actually started a new sermon series called All In. Can I hear you say All In? Right, that's right. And what we've been talking about is this idea of how faith is really this all or nothing kind of thing. Now, for those of you guys who are maybe new to church or not a Christian here, welcome. We're so glad you made it. And during this series, we're talking about what does it mean to have faith, like fully kind of be all in on faith. And one of the things that we talked about was how Jesus is either Lord of all or he's not Lord at all. In other words, kind of this faith thing is not like, okay, well, I'm halfway in. It's this thing where it's I'm all the way in, or I'm not. And the invitation that God gives to us is, are we all the way in with God or not? And actually tomorrow, some of you may have received this correspondence. Tomorrow we're actually starting a 21-day fast. And a 21-day fast is really, as we start the new year, we as a church and our leadership thought that it'd be great if each of us could kind of center our hearts in such a way where we fast from something. And the reason why we do this, and this theme comes up time and time again, we fast, whether it's food or social media or something that we can choose to fast, to say, God, I'm going to give this up so that I can more fully center on who you are. And so if you'd like to register or sign up for that, you can check our website. We also have correspondence that's going on about that. And a fast is really kind of all in on this all in theme about like, hey, what does it mean for us to be all in? Now today, we're actually going to talk about a theme called all your money and all your life. And again, talking again about this idea of all or nothing. And you know what's interesting is that the Christian movement around the world, if you actually look at where's Christianity spreading and growing, one would actually notice that it's actually growing in the South as well as in the East. And it's primarily growing in populations that are in poverty or are persecuted. Now, isn't that interesting? Like this Christian movement then, it moves and it grows and it flourishes where there's pain and difficulty and oppression. And even if you look throughout the history of the world, a lot of the movements, the liberation movements that have occurred throughout the world, whether it's against the abolition of slavery, for instance, a lot of those movements were actually birthed out of Christian principles and Christian belief. And the reason why is because the good news of Jesus and the good news of the Christian faith was always this empowering, liberating kind of faith. So even in our country, if you look at women's suffrage and the empowerment of women, a lot of that actually came from Christians who had this belief that what God has come to do is to liberate us and to set us free. And this is the good news of Jesus Christ. And so and why is that the case? Why is it the case that around the world and throughout history, that the gospel and the good news of Christianity has often been kind of growing and moving out of areas of oppression and difficulty? It's because if you follow the stories in Scripture and even the person of Jesus, he was someone who came from the underclass. He came from a refugee family. So as a result, it makes sense then that the good news, that this whole Christian story, people who find themselves kind of with their backs against the wall in feelings of oppression or marginalization, of course, they're going to feel empowered by this kind of story. Now, the story that we read today, though, is a different kind of story. And it's a story of someone who's known as a rich young ruler. And the gospel accounts, which are these historical accounts, Jesus has this encounter with this rich young ruler, which we talked about last week. Now, in the social status, he's not someone who's marginalized or oppressed or someone who's kind of on the bottom rung of society. He's actually someone who's rich, he's young, and he's a ruler. And this is what the different stories tell us. In other words, he's someone that's got an incredible social clout. His reputation as someone who has a lot is well known. Otherwise, that wouldn't have been mentioned time and time again as this story is told. And yet, here's this guy who's a rich young ruler who's also very religious, and he's kept the commandments. Now, for many of us, and we talked about this last week. Last week, I was saying, many of us, maybe we can't really identify fully with the story that many people in Scripture find themselves with. Because for us who live in arguably the most influential, expensive plot of land in the world, right here in Manhattan, many of us don't come from a background of oppression and difficulty, but today, by virtue of being in this room, we're likely people with enormous social capital, enormous wealth. By the very fact that we're here in Manhattan right now, compared to the rest of the world, we probably have all sorts of earning potential and wealth and that sort of thing. So in other words, the story of the rich young ruler is likely the story of us all. Now, some of you might be like, you don't understand, Drew, like I grew up in Idaho or something, right? Like no social capital from Idaho. I don't think there's anyone from Idaho here, but nonetheless, right? Like you might say like, yeah. But here's what I'll submit to you, that this story is actually a story that many of us could probably relate to based on the fact that this was a man who had enough wealth and youth and that his social clout was high enough that it shows that the story of God is actually a story that includes people of all kinds of social class. And here, this story of the rich young ruler, here it comes, right? And this is what happens. As the Gospel of Mark says, as Jesus started his way, a man ran up to him and fell on his knees before him. So he's humble. He's thirsty for this. He says, good teacher, he asked Jesus, what must I do to inherit eternal life? You see, this rich young ruler, he's wealthy, but he's also humble. He's got a good heart disposition to him. And he comes to Jesus and he basically says, what can I do to be close to God? What does it mean to be in this right relationship with God? And look what it says. Why do you call me good? Jesus answered, no one is good except God alone. And we explored this last week. He says, you know the commandments. You should not murder. You should not commit adultery. You should not steal. You should not give false. You should not defraud. Honor your father and your mother. In other words, Jesus gives this list of commands. That's not the full 10 commandments, but he gives this list of commands. Now, check out how this rich young ruler responds. This is great. He says, teacher, all these things I have kept since I was a boy. I've been a good Christian boy. Of course, he didn't use those words, but he's like, I do the religious thing. I go on Sundays. I even give a little bit of my money. I do all these things that you just talked about. I live a moral life. And so this guy's got everything going for him. The people around him probably think that he's so blessed by God because he's rich, he's young, he's a ruler, and he's a religious person. He's the kind of guy that your parents are great. If you're like dating this guy, it's like, yes, we found a rich young ruler to date and to take care of my daughter, whatever it might be. Like this is someone who's religious, who's doing the right thing. In many ways, he's got everything going for him. Now, here's what Jesus says, though. Jesus looked at him, and he loved him. And look what he says, one thing you lack, he said, go sell everything you have and give it to the poor. I can imagine this guy being like, I thought you said one thing I lacked. You're asking him to give up everything. And he says, and you have treasure in heaven, then come follow me. At this, the man's face fell. And look at what it says. He went away sad. He wasn't confused. It's not like Jesus was unclear about what it means to follow him. He wasn't confused. He wasn't angry. He was sad. Why was he sad? Because he knew he had great wealth. Money. Money was the issue. He's this good person who has a good heart, and Jesus basically confronts him because it's the elephant in the room, right? This guy is basically so excited because he's like, I've kept all these things since I was a boy. Surely I'm blessed by God because I'm rich, I'm young, I'm a ruler. Surely I've got everything going for me. All these things even. I'm a moral person. And Jesus is like, no. I'm going to address the elephant in the room right now. And here's the elephant in the room. See, you are known by your wealth. Everyone knows you as being rich and wealthy. And sure, you might give a little bit of your money, but here's what I'm going to call you out on. Because remember, this faith thing, it's either I'm Lord of all or I'm not Lord at all. So here's what I'm going to do. So Jesus basically calls him out. He loves him. He calls him out. And he basically says, one thing you lack. I want you to sell everything. Sell everything. Give it to the poor. And come and follow me. He's basically calling out this guy and basically saying, you think you are close to God, but this one big area that everyone can see and everyone knows still lurks there. It's this thing called money. And money is what's keeping you back from fully, totally giving up everything to be all in with me. Now, here's the thing. And remember I talked about how the rich young ruler we can probably all relate to. Because here's the thing, we live in a city that was founded on money. Dutch settlers come to New York, displace some of the natives people here. And it's basically the story of our city has been about money, and it's continued to be about money. Now, here's what I know about our city, is that you might be someone who's like barely making it. and you're living somewhere like you want to live in Midtown, but instead you're living in Queens or something, right? You're kind of like you feel like you barely have enough money, or you're someone who's got enormous earning potential. You've got, some solid finances. Here's what I want to submit to you. By virtue of living right here in New York City, you and I'm pretty sure this is true. All of us, we feel the taunts of money every day. Like money continues to taunt us and haunt us in this city. It doesn't matter if you have a little, it doesn't matter if you have a lot. I mean, there's folks here right now who are basically like, you're making more than you ever thought you could make, but still money taunts you. It still tells you, you don't have enough. Why are you living here? Man, you should move to Florida or the Poconos. And then you're like, but they don't have good ramen. Or right, like but there's all these taunts, right? These taunts that it's just basically like, if you have a lot of money, the taunts are basically like, yeah, you make a lot of money now, but I don't know if it's enough to really thrive in this city. There's other people in this city that make way more money than you. Like I think you need to get to that level. Or you know what? You should just, right, with your money, you've got to basically just spend it on yourself. Don't, be really, really frugal with it. Here's the thing. Wherever you are on the social spectrum, here's what I want to submit to you. Money is that one thing that continues to taunt us, especially in this town. Because you know what? Money rules this town, doesn't it? Money does. It constantly does. Now, that's not something new, though, throughout history, and that's not something new to our city. But I'll tell you what, here in New York, it's a huge part of it, isn't it? Whether you're an artist or a banker or a finance, whatever it is, money rules this town. And throughout history, money has. And this is why Jesus, the second most thing that Jesus talks about, aside from poverty, is money. He constantly talks about money because he knows the way that money taunts us, the way that it gets its tentacles in us. And as a result, when it comes to money, many of us, we just kind of think, oh yeah, that's something that someone else struggles with. Or you know what, I'm not like that rich. If those rich people, if they gave more taxes or they gave more generously, then the world would change. Like there's this way in which money, we continue to think that we don't struggle with it. You know what's interesting, though? That throughout history, though, money is constantly talked about. And money is the one thing that throughout history, throughout culture, it's always there, taunting us. It has its grips on us, and we don't even know it. But especially in this town, because some of us are like, I'm not like a billionaire person, but nonetheless, money just continues to have its grips on you and me at the same time. That's why Jesus would actually teach in another account in the Gospel of Matthew. Check out what he says. He says, no one can serve two masters. He's talking about your allegiance to different things. He said, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you will be devoted to the one and despise the other. So he's talking about how all of us worship something. And either you can't have a divided person that you worship or divided thing that you worship. You've got to be all in on one or the other. Otherwise, you can't really fully function and live with integrity. But look at what he says. Look at when he's talking about this. He gives the one God that throughout history, throughout time, throughout geography, has always been a struggle. It's money. He says, you cannot serve both God and money. What it means to be all in, when Jesus is your Lord of all, and what he's saying to this rich young ruler is like, one thing you lack. Listen, you've done all the right thing. You've done the religious thing. You've maybe even given a little bit of your money. But here's what I want to tell you. If you really want to show you're all in, here's what I want you to do. I want you to give away your money. In other words, this is what Jesus is saying. If you want to follow Jesus, he's saying, you must give away your money. You must. If anyone here wants to follow Jesus, you and I, we must give away your money. Because here's what Jesus is basically saying. Because money is the one thing that throughout history and time, and for this rich young ruler, is his sense of security and comfort and all the things that he's holding on, that's keeping him back from being all in with God. What Jesus is basically saying, if anyone wants to follow me, money is that one thing that every single one of us, despite where you are on the social ladder, despite wherever you are in your earning potential, money is the one thing that continues to taunt us, continues to have its grips and its tentacles in us. And this is what Jesus is basically saying. If you want to follow me, you need to give your money away. Because here's what it takes. Here's what it takes. When money is taunting you in the face, telling you don't have enough. How dare you live in New York? You don't have enough. You're not going to have enough to take care of your family. You're not going to have enough to go on those vacations. You're not going to make it. God's not going to take care of you. Like, you better hold on tighter. See, when you give your money away, what you're doing is you're throwing that money back in Mammon's face. And you're saying, money, you've got nothing on me. Got nothing. Got nothing on me. And when we do that, when we're able to give ourselves away fully, last week we talked about trust is basically an all or nothing thing. It's not like this halfway, I'm kind of in this red or this yellow light. It's a green light proposition. And what green light is, you lose your gravity. And when you lose your gravity, you're basically saying, yeah, even my money, God, I'm going to give to you. And when you give away that money, what you're basically saying to money is basically, you got nothing on me. You got no control over me. Now, when we talk about money, and we talk about this regularly here at Hope, one of the things that we talk about is the way that people often can spend money or use money. We talk about these three different ways. We either spend, we save, or in New York, I know we talk about investment. Let's just put investment also in save. We spend, we invest or save, and then we give. And in many ways, this kind of way and priorities of using our money, it's just like the rest of New York, isn't it? We spend what we can. We go on the vacations that we want to eat at the places that we want to do the things that we want to first. Then maybe out of that, we'll save some, and then we'll invest. And then giving will be an afterthought. Giving it away is an afterthought. Why? Because this is the way that every single person and our culture is preaching us to think about money. We spend first, then we save or we invest a little bit. And some of us, we're so we think ourselves out of even being generous by simply saying things like, you know what, I'm basically going to invest this money so that I can create a donor advised fund that will create more revenue so that one day I'll give out of that investment. I mean, this is kind of how we think. We think of all of these different ways. Anything that keeps us from flipping the script. You see, and when Jesus is teaching on this, when he's saying, if you want to follow me, you must give your money away. He's basically flipping the script and he's saying, give, save, spend, in that order. In fact, let me hear you say it. Give, save, spend. Thank you. It's in that order. That generosity, that giving your money away is the one thing that frees your grip, that keeps you from being all in. Now, here's the thing. Most of us, we've kind of already feel uncomfortable about this. They're like, oh, there goes that preacher guy talking about money again. And some of us feel very uncomfortable talking about money. In fact, it feels like, wait a minute. In fact, you're probably even explaining to yourself, well, I just got all this student debt that I'm trying to pay off right now. Or you're probably thinking to yourself, well, my apartment, real estate is crazy in New York. I don't know what Drew's talking about. He should probably be talking to, he probably should be giving this talk to a bunch of millionaires and billionaires in the city. This is what we do. We talk ourselves out of this. We talk ourselves out of, he's not really talking to me. But here's the thing. Money has its grips in all of us. Has its grips in me. Last week I was sharing about how I kind of pride myself because I grew up in an immigrant background out in Los Angeles, and we grew up with very little, our family did. And so I've told this story before about how I used to, back when we were kids, one of the things that for birthday parties, you get invited to a birthday party, and we'd go to these things called arcades. Anyone heard of an arcade before? Yes, a couple of hands go up, right? In an arcade, basically what would happen is every parent who was the parent of the birthday child would basically give coins to the person who's going to this arcade, or all the kids. And so every kid would be like, oh yeah, give me the coin, give me the quarters, right? And so I'd get these quarters from the party host. And I remember you'd always get 2 quarters and you could play whatever arcade game you wanted to. And so I'd get these quarters, and then all the kids would be running to be the first to play their games. And I'd basically get these quarters, and I put them in my pocket. And then I would watch everyone play the whole time, and I'd come home and I'd save these quarters because that's what we did. I mean, it was, and I talked about last week how I've become somewhat proud of my frugality. I'm like, I only got, like 3 pairs of jeans, and I wear the same jeans every day for 3 consecutive days. And some of you are like, we don't need to know that, Drew. But, there's this way in which my frugality, and Tina and I, we argue about this quite a bit. My frugality, like, I tend to be really, really kind of proud about it. And I start to think of everyone else like, oh my goodness, like, why does money have this grip on everyone else? Money doesn't have a grip on me. Like, we're doing what we have to do. We give, we save, and we spend. It doesn't have the same grip on me as it does on you, Tina, or on our kids. I don't understand that. And I could get so proud about it. I get so proud about having, like, this frugal, I don't spend on frivolous things. I save everything. Like, I get so proud about it. But, one of the things that Tina pointed out to me, though, was like I check our bank account like every single day. Like every single day, sometimes twice a day. And here I am so proud about being Mr. Frugal. And money just, it's got its grip on me. I'm so afraid that we're not going to have enough. I'm so afraid we can't take care of our family in the future. I'm just that immigrant kid, trying to hustle, save a couple quarters from the arcade, right? Like that's who I am. And so there's this part of me that tends to become proud and arrogant about like, oh, look at how frugal I am. Look at how cool I am that I don't wear nice clothes, weirdly. But meanwhile, money still has its same grip on me. Why am I checking the bank account every single day? It's because money just keeps taunting me. Man, you better watch your money. You better not, like, you're not going to have enough here. You're not going to be able to take care of your family. You're not going to, like, just money just keeps taunting me. As I was thinking about this, I was thinking about what's the image that occurs every single time I check the bank account. And I thought it's an image like this. Gollum. It's the little Gollum inside of me. It's the little Gollum inside of you. Who we're clinging to my precious. Now, this Gollum, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether your earning potential is 6 figures and above, or whether it's way below that. There's a Gollum inside all of us. Inside all of us. And this is why money is mentioned so frequently. It's because money's that thing. And I dare say, even within each of us, there's a little Gollum arising even within you and me right now. It's like, oh, Drew, okay, yeah, like, listen, I give, okay? But you and I know this, right? You give out of whatever's convenient to you. Right? I mean, I do this all the time. I'm checking the bank account every single day. You and I know this. This is what we do. And we convince ourselves. Money doesn't have that grip on me. Like, we spend like way better than that other family spends or these other people that use money. But man, not me. But here's the thing. There's a Gollum inside every single one of us. Just continues to claw. And when money taunts us, what we do is we believe the taunts. And we succumb to the taunts. And we make ourselves feel a little bit better maybe by like, okay, fine, I'm not going to spend on that big vacation. Instead, I'll go on this one. We make ourselves feel better about these things. Meanwhile, money just continues to taunt us. It says, yep, I've got my grip on you. I've got my grip on you too. I'm like, yeah, but I give a little bit to, and see, but money's still taunting you. Money's still taunting me. It still has its grip. And the one thing Jesus is saying, if you want to follow me, here's what I want you to do. I want you to give that money away. I want you to give the money away because it's the only thing that's powerful enough to show you. Notice, like Jesus isn't even talking here about the benefits of generosity and what your generosity will elicit for the poor and whatever else and for charities. He's simply talking to this man, basically saying, you know what? Money's constantly on your mind. It's on your heart. And if you want to be all in, you need to give it away. You need to give it away. How many of us today in the room, here's where it's confronting us. Hey, it's easy to tell. Are you in or are you out? It's easy to tell. Are you giving your money away or are you not? Now, here's the thing. Many of you are probably like, I can't believe this preacher. The audacity in a sophisticated place like New York that this guy would start challenging me about my money, right? Like, sorry, I got a little excited there, but right, there's a way that even within each of us, there's, now it's becomes a blame game towards me, and you're projecting some of the anxiety about like all of this towards like, I can't believe you're, well, you know what? You don't even have to give to the church. Don't even give to Hope Midtown. Give to a charity of your choice. Because I don't want this from you. I want this for you. I want you and I, because money has its tentacles in you and me, I want you and I to find the freedom that's found in giving it away. Because if anyone wants to follow Jesus, you have to be free from the things, from the masters that continue to hold you and me. And it's so easy for me. I check my bank account every single day. And I've done that for most of my adult life. And the one thing Jesus is inviting me to is, will you give your money away? There's that Gollum inside of me and inside of you that's just like, oh, my precious. And so one of the things that we talk about is giving 10% gross to a church or charity. Now, some of you might be like, 10%, you're so legalistic about this and da-da-da-da. I'm simply saying 10%. It was an Old Testament kind of tithe that was given. The New Testament, the kind of the idea around the history of giving and generosity was that everything belongs to God. Now, 10% gross, though, is something that we encourage as a baseline to give to church or to charity. Again, if you don't believe in the way that we're spending our money at Hope Midtown, give it to a charity that you believe in, that you're fully all in with. Now, why do we say 10% gross? Because 10% gross in a city like New York, it hurts like hell. Can I get an amen there? We got one amen. It does. It hurts. It hurts. And in many ways, it's the only thing. It's the only way that we can taunt money back in its face and say, you've got nothing on me. Now, here's the thing. Some of us, we give what's comfortable for us, but what would it look like? And some of us are like, I've never seen God move radically in my life. And, I do the religious thing, just like this rich young ruler. I've kept all the rules and the religious thing, but God has never moved in a great way. Well, here's what I want you to know. Have you ever put yourself out there in such a great way where you said, God, I want to see you do something so miraculous because I'm going to put myself out there for you to work, to show yourself, to see whether you are who you say you are. And that's what we encourage: give, save, and spend. Now, here's the crazy thing. When Jesus begins to teach his disciples about what they just witnessed between this interaction between the rich young ruler and Jesus, look at what Jesus teaches. He says, truly I tell you, Jesus replied, no one who has left home or brothers or sisters or mother or father or children or fields for me in the gospel. In other words, if anyone who has left all of these things, some of the most valuable things that anyone, whether secular or religious, can think of, look what he says, will fail to receive 100 times as much in this present age: homes, brothers, sisters, mothers, children and fields, along with persecutions, by the way, just a side note, and in the age to come, eternal life. But many who are first will be last, and the last first. This is what Jesus is saying. If you can entrust, if you can give away your money so that it can release its grip on you and on me, if you can do this, I want you to know this. When you let go, God will actually, this is his promise. He will give you 100x. 100 times. If you can trust him, you can see him do something so astounding that it'll blow your mind. How many of us trust God that much? Again, have you been in a place where you said, God, yeah, I'm all in. I'm so all in. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you this money. And I'm going to believe that when I give it away, you're going to bless. You're going to bless this so that I will actually not have any needs. All my needs will be taken care of. Now, that takes enormous trust, and perhaps some of us have not experienced the freedom and the power of this because we've never put ourselves out there, because we've never said, God, here it is. I'm all in. Here it is. Take it. And again, 10% gross is just like a baseline level because it hurts to say, like, God, here it is. Go ahead and take this. You know what's amazing is that the Apostle Paul, he writes this letter to the church in Philippi, and when he writes this letter, he's in prison as he's writing this. Think about this. He's in prison. He's being persecuted. And he writes this letter because the church in Philippi has been supporting him financially. And check out what he says. He says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned, but you had no opportunity to show it. And he's basically saying, thank you so much for all your support for me, even while I've been up and down, and I even ended up in prison. And this is what he says. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty of money and plenty of things. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. This is what Paul is saying. He's saying, I've known having a lot of money. I've known having a little bit of money. And this is what he says. I can actually do all things through Christ who gives me strength. He's in prison as he's writing this. He is so free from the tentacles of money. He's so free from the taunts that haunt you and me, right? All those taunts that rule this town. He's so free from it. He's like, you know what? I've learned with open hands. I can live with a lot, live with a little. Either way, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Just think about that. Isn't that a dream for you and me? Isn't that a dream for all of us? That we'd be so free from all of what money provides: security, comfort, prestige, that we'd be free from it. That we could actually throw money back in its face and say, you have got nothing on me. Got nothing. I follow someone who I trust is so great and so good that I know that even if I give it away, he's got me. He's got me. He's got me 100x. He's got me. He's going to take care of me. And here's the good news of the Christian message. And if you're not a Christian here, this is one of the things that we believe about money. This is the good news. That God himself is the most generous God who would actually, at very little benefit to himself, but actually at very high cost to himself, give his life away, die on the cross, resurrect from the grave to show you he is for you and not against you. He will take care of you, even if it means giving his own life. He will take care of you. And if he will take care of you, think about the freedom. Think about the freedom that you and I can have, because whenever those taunts come, whenever those moments come where we doubt his provision, his greatness, we can throw the money back in the face of mammon where it came from and say, like, you know what? You've got nothing on me. I'm free because you know what? Whether I have a lot or whether I have a little, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. If you want to follow Jesus, will you give your money away? Irenaeus, who was a Greek cleric in the 2nd century, one of the phrases that he used, which I've been meditating on this past week, is this phrase. He says, submission to God is eternal rest. Submission to God is eternal rest. Now, many of us, we think, that's not restful. Submitting and surrendering is not restful. That's actually super stressful for me because I'm a control freak, because I'm a type A Manhattanite. or whatever else you might think of yourself, or whatever else you tell yourself in this city. But here's what Irenaeus says about the spiritual life. It's that when you actually submit to God, when you actually surrender to God, you actually find rest. You find a rest where your security and your comfort doesn't come from your material possessions or anything around you, but it comes from entrusting yourself to the greatness of God, and to the goodness of God. That when you give your money away, like you've actually surrendered control and you've let God be God. And that's the invitation to you and I today. Will you be all in? Will you say to money, which has its tentacles in all of us, will you say, you've got nothing on me. You've got nothing on me. Because my hope and my foundation is not in what I possess and what I have and what I can say, my precious, but instead it's on a God who I know will take care of me.